And I stop the transcription. Okay, perfect. So this is done. And now we can start with what you need. Again, you need 2 hours in undisturbed time. You need a notebook to make maybe some notes, your memory to think about your last paper or something like this, and time for feedback. Another question, is there any student here today? Please, if you're a student, raise your hands as well.
You mean graduate students?
Master or bachelor students. So students who have never written a paper or never came in contact with papers. So I just check, Carmel, I think either you're a very good student in a later career stage, or you have your hands raised up from the question before.
I took it down, Marcus, because I'm actually a PhD student.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. But as a PhD student, you're at least familiar with papers. Because
Yes.
today it will be a little bit of focus on papers. So if it's a bachelor or master student, you will still learn something, but the focus is more going on to writing papers and stuff like this. Good.
That's fine by me.
Yeah. Here is the feedback form. Let's see if I get this. I just try to copy. Yes, that works. I just copy already in the chat the feedback form. As well, we, like the last time, we ask you how your knowledge about storytelling was before, how it is now. Please be honest, tell me what I can improve, because I want to do this seminar for the next years in RunU, because there will always be new people in RunU or people who have this time and hadn't had time the last time. So please give me a recommendation how I can improve it. Again, my story, really short today because a lot of people know me already from last week, but there were people who were not here last week. I'm a little boy from Bavaria in Germany, and basically this is the town where I grew up. It's long but not wide. This is the view from the balcony of my parents, so really calm. And these are my friends from the first 20 years of my life. So we have more cows than people. Now we have more people than cows because the farmers are not doing their farms anymore, but we still have the same amount of people. So the people are more than the cows at the moment, at least. Let's see if we have a new farmer, if the situation switches again. And what I did afterwards is I went to the University of Bayreuth in Germany and stayed there for 13 years, basically in this building, the first 5 years, because that's the building where all the lectures are. There is a little nice room for the student policy makers, and I was there basically living. And the years afterwards, I switched to the left-hand side building because there is the chair of technical thermodynamics, and I had my office there for another 7 years before I then went to Vorarlberg. And what I did, the same like we do all in RunU, if I invited someone to Bayreuth, I showed them always the nice castle we have there to show them that Bayreuth is not just a university, but also a cultural city. And now you already see what I'm doing. I'm not saying my name because you know that I'm Marcus, that was in the email. I try to tell a story. And in a half a year, if someone asks you, okay, the guy who did the storytelling seminar, you're basically 100% sure you know that in my home village there are more cows than people, and you think, yeah, I think he studied somewhere where there is a castle. And this is the only thing I want to know. I don't think that in half a year you know my name or you know exactly that I'm working in thermodynamics or stuff like this, or now I'm head of research at FHV, but you know the castle and you know the cows. And this is something we have to do in storytelling. Then I moved to Austria. This is what the people from last week knew as well. And all my proposals were rejected. And then we read a book, Writing Science, and just used a few simple things the author Joshua Schimmel, an environmental scientist from America, told in this book. And from this point on, about 80 to 90% of our proposals went through. Obviously, with this success rate, we didn't apply for a lot of European research funds, because there you have about 10%. But in Austria, it's about 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 proposals are going through, so are funded. And we got this level up, so from 25 to 30% to about 80 to 90%. And we are still constant on this level. Also, the person who has my position now, the head of the research center, he is doing the same, and he is really successful with the same rules as well. He just got 1 million euro from the Austrian funding agency for a project of him, where we just got 1 out of 3 through for FHV. And the goals for today are, again, why is storytelling important? That's a little bit the same like I said last week. So here again, for the ones who were here last week, give me again for about 5 minutes to get the others on board as well. But then we come to a totally different topic. How important is an overall structure for your theses, publications, and research proposals? Why is a funnel a good picture for a story structure, and what can we learn from chess players? So, you know, the last time I focused a lot on storytelling, a lot of marketing and stuff like this. Today we see how we really write a nice story. So the structure behind it, the methods behind it, this is the topic we want to discover today. And that's basically the bullet points 2, 3, and 4. But first of all, why is storytelling important? And Elias knows this exactly, because this was one of his projects. We had to convince a company, a thermal power plant company from Vorarlberg, to join a research proposal with us. They have to pay 50% of the money. We get another 50 of Vienna, so from the state of Austria. And we wanted to have a PhD candidate or a postdoc on this topic. In this case, we hired then a PhD candidate, and Elias was here as a postdoc who worked in this project as well. And I said at this point, okay, we can phrase it in 1 line or in 2 lines or 2 sentences. And it says, the breakdown times of biomass power plants due to human failure and or technological issues have to be reduced to prevent the operator from economic risks. Predictive maintenance based on unsupervised learning is a solution for this task. So everything is written in these 3 lines, in these 2 sentences. And even if you're not an engineer, you have something in your mind now. You have in mind that there is a big power plant, if it's biomass or not, don't care. And sometimes in this power plant, someone is doing something wrong or something breaks down on a technological issue. And then obviously this is an economic risk, because if you shut down a whole power plant, that's never good for the operator. So this is a picture you have in your mind now. And now it's coming for the non-technical. It's a little bit problematic, because what is predictive maintenance? Maintenance, yes, but what is predictive? What is unsupervised learning? But you see still a little bit of a picture. You say, okay, it's going a little bit into the direction of maintenance, and maybe maintenance before the whole power plant crashes. That's the idea you have now based on these 2 sentences. And this is quite a lot. So there you have already pictures in your mind. Still, there is a better way to do it. And this is what I did with exactly this one. Schimmel says you always have to tell the people what is the problem and why it is a problem. So maybe you as a non-engineer say, yeah, but I don't care if the power plant is broken or if it crashes. Then start it all over again and it's fine. But maybe the engineers know that each day the power plant is shut down costs you 1 million euro. Then you say, even if as a non-engineer, oh crap, 1 million euro, of course you have to do something against this problem. So you have problem and you have so what? Afterwards, you have to provide them solutions. That's what I did in a sentence as well. I said unsupervised learning will be a method to do it. And then you have to tell them the benefits. And this is something I didn't tell in the sentence, but they know if they save the 1 million euro, they have their benefits. So that's basically what you can do all the time for each and every paper. You can say, okay, I need a clear problem. I need a clear so what, why it is a problem, a solution, and a benefit for the whole community or the people who read my paper. And then you just have to know what is the issue, in our case, thermal power plants, and what is the audience, in our case, the CEO who had to say, yes, I give you, Markus, 40,000 euro for the next year for the research project. Now I have to stop for a second because Carmel and Carla, you still have your hands on. Maybe you put it down or you have a question. If you have a question, feel free. If not, it would be great to get your hand down because if not, I'm a bit confused that I always see two hands.
I'm sorry, Markus, I can't see where to take it down.
Okay, there must be on the top of your MS Teams, there should be a hand somewhere.
Yes.
And if you click on it, it should go down. Yes, perfect. You did it.
Thank you.
Me
Perfect.
too. I'm sorry, mine is down as well.
Yes, yours is down
Yes.
as well.
I'm
Now
so
every
sorry.
hands are down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So sorry,
and if
I
you have a
couldn't see it.
question,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. No,
if you have
it's
a
not
question,
okay.
feel free to get your hands up again. Perfect.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Good. Okay. And now I try to tell you the story in a little bit different way, that you have even stronger, an even stronger picture in your mind where you say, yes, I invest in this project. We have Bob. Bob is a power plant engineer, and he has a night shift today for the power plant. And we have Sarah. Sarah is the head of the operating team, and she is sleeping in her bed because she knows Bob is taking care, and I don't have to care about the power plant because I need a good sleep to be at the office tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Problem, Bob encounters a problem with a temperature sensor. A temperature is increasing its temperature, a temperature sensor is increasing its value, and he actually does not know if this is a real problem so that the power plant shuts down or that it is not a real problem. So what he does is, because he is not experienced enough, he is calling Sarah. Sarah gets up from bed, gets on her phone, and Bob tells her, okay, Sarah, we have a problem with temperature sensor 77. The temperature is increasing, and to be honest, I don't know what to do. So what does Sarah have to do? Sarah has to get up, get dressed, get into work with her car, and help Bob to see if it's a real problem or if it's not a problem. Actual reason at the end is the temperature sensor is broken. It's not a problem at all because the temperature sensor 75 has the exact temperature which is needed. 77 is a redundant sensor. It's broken. So Sarah sees it in the first 5 minutes, but now she is awake. She has to go home at 3 o'clock in the morning again, goes to bed and stand up at 6 o'clock. So you can now think that neither Sarah nor Bob is happy. Bob thinks he did a bad job. Sarah is not happy because she had to get up with basically not a failure in the power plant at all. So what we said at this point is, let's help Bob with his job. Give Bob an online system where all the data is stored and where the data is compared to the previous day, or where the data is compared to a day in the past where the values were basically almost the same. And in the background, always check with algorithm we implemented if the deviation in a sensor is problematic or not. And if you see a deviation, so Bob actually did a good job. He saw that the deviation is in temperature sensor 77, but sometimes you don't even know where the problem is. So tell Bob exactly at which temperature he has to look, and if there is another redundant sensor, and if there is, give him the other redundant sensor and tell him, based on the system we programmed, that if the temperature sensor 75 is okay, then he don't have to care about 77. And that's basically what we want to implement, we told the company. And what happens if we do this? It's really easy. Bob does not have to call Sarah. And what happens? Bob is happy because tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, when Sarah comes to the office, she had a really good sleep. She asked, and Bob, how was your night? And he says, yeah, temperature sensor 77 is broken, but I saw based on our system that 75 is fine. I already called the technician that he has to substitute temperature sensor 77. And Sarah says, well done, Bob. Good job. Go home, have a nice sleep, and take over the night shift next day. And I take over now for the next 8 days. So basically, everyone is happy. and the CEO of the power plant is happy as well because the power plant were not shut down. And that's the idea of storytelling. And if I ask you now, after this slide, in half a year, in the advanced storytelling seminar, what was the example at the beginning for good storytelling? You have in mind, there was Bob and Sarah, or at least there was someone who called someone else, or there was a power plant, and you have these pictures in mind, and that's important, because if you read a paper on this, and we really call the people in the paper Bob and Sarah, you cite the Bob and Sarah paper. You don't cite any paper out there, because there are millions of paper. You cite the paper where Bob and Sarah had their discussion on the temperature sensor. And this is what we want to learn. We want to combine good storytelling, good stories with now, today, the advanced level. How do we write it down? Because you don't have the option to use icons and to explain your story to the people. You have to explain it in a written way. And that was always the problem for me, to be honest. If you ask my people who I work with, they will all tell you, yeah, Marcus is talking a lot. And Marcus can convince people by talking. But 7 years ago, I had to convince people by writing. And I didn't know how to do it. And that was the problem. Now, hopefully, we know how to write and we know how to talk. And then we can really write good publications, good proposals, etc. So that's it. That was the story, which I also told last week. And now we are coming to the new part. So what actually is a good story now? You can decide on your own now, was this a good story or was this a bad story? And now we see if all these things which Schimmel says are in the story. Because the story, the abbreviation is success. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and even if you have all this, you still need a story behind it. And we go to these points now and see if or how we really need to give these words a life. Simple. Simple is finding the core essence of an issue. It's not trivializing the issue. So the idea is not to say, oh yeah, some sensor is broken. The idea is still finding the core essence, and the core essence was temperature sensor 77. That was the core issue and that was the core problem, and we solved it with temperature sensor 75. It's not a good idea to write a paper and then say, yeah, we had some problems with the temperature sensors, but we found a way how to use other temperature sensors. That's okay, but a simple thing is this one temperature sensor. Simple ideas find the core of the problem. You have to find the simple in the complex. The whole power plant we are looking at has sometimes 1.5, 2.5, 3,500 sensors. And we just published a paper a few weeks ago, it's still under review, where we said that basically from the 3,500 sensors, a range between 4 and 41 sensors are enough to describe the whole power plant when you just want to know the lifesteam of the power plant. So the system is really complex, and your research project is also complex. None of the research projects is at the beginning simple, but you have to find the simple ideas in the complex matter of your research proposal, of your research. And expressions of a simple message might be an equation, a verbal description, a diagram, a picture, a cartoon, a graphical abstract, anything. What I did was a graphical abstract. I had Bob and Sarah. That was the easy and the simple thing everyone understood, together with the temperature sensor. But it could also be a picture, a diagram, a verbal description. Coming to an equation, do we have someone from natural scientists here? A physicist or a chemist or someone? No. Okay. It's even better. Which is the simplest formula of the last centuries to describe the whole world. And you all know this formula, although you're not physicists. Who wants to have a guess? Okay, I give you the name, and then you will see, ah, yeah, I know the formula. You all know Albert Einstein. What is the simplest?
You have it in the chat. Is this?
Ah, sorry, I didn't see the chat. Sorry, that was my mistake. Yeah, very good. E equals mc squared. That's the simplest formula we have to describe the world. And the world is complex. I'm pretty sure we agree on this. But why is Albert Einstein so famous? Because he found the simple in the complex. And I don't think that we all sitting here will be Nobel Prize winners at the end. At least not me. I'm pretty sure about this. Hopefully one of you will get a Nobel Prize. But this is what you always have to have in mind. If you publish something, first of all, write down or draw down your basic simple idea. Here, this is something you know from last week. This is what a colleague of mine at the Research Center Energy did. He said, I want to get my whole research proposal into one simple picture. And he said, yeah, basically we have a lot of companies and a lot of residential homes which have PV at the moment on their roofs and who has electric fleets. The problem is that if we combine here the industry part, which are mostly on the medium voltage grid, together with the low voltage grid. So basically, sorry, basically I have to get the laser pointer, then it's easy. Basically the electricity cable going directly to your house. If we go and combine this, and we have a lot of more PVs and a lot of more EVs, then we will have some grids that fail, that are problematic or that are fine. And what we have to do in an expert team is now to decide how do we get all the red ones, so the grids that fail in the next week, in the next years, how do we get them to orange ones and how do we get the orange one to green ones? And afterwards, we tell someone to implement these algorithms and then we test it again. So this is basically a research project worth several hundred thousands of euros to get the algorithms to really optimize this grid between medium and low voltage grid. And if you write now a proposal and you get this into the proposal, this nice graphical abstract, then you can explain the whole proposal just with one picture to the reviewer. And the reviewer will say, ah, yes, this was this handwritten drawing. And this is something we have to achieve. And still a really easy idea behind it. Combine medium voltage with low voltage and see if the grid is working or not. That's the basic, simple idea of the whole project. Then you have to be unexpected. Good papers are grounded on novelty and unexpectedness. So if a reviewer reads your abstract and he or she says, yeah, basically everything is known. It's just a little bit better than the other paper, but I'm skeptic. Then you're lost. If a reviewer reads the abstract and he or she thinks, oh, that's quite new. I've never read something like this. Or, oh, I didn't expect this. Then you're good. That's what you have to achieve. So you have to find the knowledge gap that is relevant for the community. Don't find the knowledge gap which is relevant for you. Because if it's just for you, why publish it at the end? And the idea is that you have to publish it, so you have to solve a problem the community has. So what I'm always doing is, I'm also reading very, very carefully the conclusion chapter of papers, where there's always the sentence, in the next step we still want to do. Obviously, they are working on this topic already. But to be honest, it's also a source of information, what is not known in literature so far. And if you have such a gap, it can be even incremental. That's important, especially for young or for PhD students in their early career stage, they always think they have to change the world. Obviously, it would be nice. But even if you have an incremental part of the community solved, then the community can work on this new solution and get further in their development. Identify the knowledge gap also to create curiosity and fill the gap to create novelty. That's important. And one of the best sentences I ever heard about this topic was my former boss, a thermodynamic professor from Bayreuth. He said, Mr. Preisinger, if you apply for a professorship and you're invited to a hearing, tell the professors a novel and unexpected research topic so that they will think, if I'm young again, I will go into this research topic as well. If you manage this, you will get the job and you will become a professor. And he was right. If the people are sitting there and saying, because normally all the people who are in hearings, they are over 50 years old and they are not changing their whole research direction anymore. But if they think, oh, that's really cool. If I'd be 40 again or 35 again, I would do exactly this. Then it's unexpected. Then you have a curious person sitting next to you. Being concrete. If those who have studied the art of writing are in accord on any one point, it is this: the surest way to arouse and hold the reader's attention is being specific, definite, and concrete. This is always where I tell my PhD students, don't write the temperature is rising. Write the temperature rose by 40%, because the 40% is specific, it's definite, and it's concrete. So if you have, and you all have this, independent of your research area, you all have data. From the data, you have to get information. From the information, you have to get knowledge. And from the knowledge, you have to get a new understanding for the community. Make sure that on the way from data to understanding, most of the time we have the data stored on our computer. It might be some measurement of the lab. It might be a survey in the social sciences. It might be anything else. This is stored on our computer. We know it, we understand it, etc. And we know basically what we want to tell as a story for the new understanding. The problem is sometimes I reject papers with the reason the data are not enough for the new understanding they also want to tell us. So I say I don't see the new understanding in the data. And why? Because they are losing themselves in the middle part. They have to make clear that the data really supports the information, that the information really supports the knowledge, and the knowledge really supports the new understanding. And if you're not specific, definite, and concrete here, we might lose the reviewer on the way from the beginning to the end of our paper. Or for the proposal, that's also a typical rejection reason for proposals. You tell in your proposals, I'm 100% sure that after 3 years and 200,000 euro, there will be a new understanding on topic X in our community. And then you tell the reviewer what data you want to use and what methods you want to use. And then sometimes I get a proposal and I reject it with the reason that I think that the data and the methods of this proposal are not suited to get to the new understanding. If you want to do a survey on social impact of refugees in Vorarlberg, and then you're saying, oh yes, I do a survey just with 50 people from Tyrol, then obviously you cannot get to the new understanding because you ask people in Tyrol about something which is happening in Vorarlberg. And therefore be specific enough that you always have the right data, the right information, the right knowledge to get to the new understanding. Credible is also a critical issue. The idea is always the same. You have papers that were submitted years ago and years ago and years ago, until today when you want to get your submission done. That's the present. So what you have to do is you have to combine the past with the present. You have to tell the people, in the past we had some gaps in literature and I dock on these gaps with my present solution today, with my paper, I want to fill these gaps. So that's basically this chain here, combining the past with the present. But that's not enough. People stop here. And that's a problem. Because if you just say, I want to fill the gap, and you don't tell them what they can do with filling the gap in the future, then you're losing them as well, especially if you're writing proposals. Because then you say, okay, you have filled the gap, but what is the reason? What is the further understanding? What is the benefit? So that's basically the benefit you have to tell them in the future. So you have to always say, okay, this is the past. We saw some gaps. If I fill these gaps, in the future, we can do a new research, or we can progress further with the research we are doing at the moment, or there's a new understanding, or there's a benefit for the whole community. That's a part you have to do as well, especially, I tell you, in research proposals, because research papers are often looking back and saying, okay, I did already the work and I filled the gap, and it's hard to say, okay, it's always going a lot of in the near future. But if you write a proposal, you have to tell them, this is the past. If you give me now the money, in 3 years, you will have a new future in this specific part we are funding the research proposal. And emotional. And this is always the biggest discussion point, because everyone thinks science is unemotional, dispassionate, and objective in communicating. You're not allowed to get your own ideas in it. It has to be objective in communication. Yes, that's true. However, two emotions are allowed, and they are not just allowed, they're necessary. And that's curiosity and excitement. Because if you're writing your paper so unemotional and so dispassionate and so objective in communication that no one reads it, come on, no one, what is the research then for? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, we should not say, okay, the objective way to produce or to show the results would be this, but I think I do it different because I have my own opinion on the results. That's not the idea. But you have to make sure that the people who are listening to you or who are writing or reading your papers, they are curious and they're excited. So if you're curious and ask engaging questions, you make your reviewers excited about your work, and that's what you need, an excited reviewer. And this is also the reason why I tell all my research students, please ask a research question. And sometimes they say, I want to do a hypothesis. I don't like questions in my introduction. Yes, you can do it like this if you're good. But if you're asking a question always arises curiosity and excitement if it's a good question. And it's allowed, obviously, to ask research questions. We will see this later today in the seminar. So an excited reader is a good reader, and it is your job to make her or him excited. It's not the job of the reader that the reader downloads your paper and then he or she thinks, oh, now I'm in an excited status and I'm reading it. No, he or she should get your introduction out, read the research question, and then think, okay, I'm totally tired and I should go to the canteen to get a coffee, but I really want to read this paper first because it's so excited, or I'm so excited about the answer of the research question. That's your job. If you're doing this, then you get your proposals through. And last but not least, even if you have a story that fulfills all 5 aspects, you still have to think about the story itself. You have a research paper is generally between 8 and 12 pages. A research proposal is generally between 30 and 50 pages. There is no one story where you can keep the reviewer or the reader for 10, 12, even 50 pages excited. You have to have sub-stories, you have to have story modules, you have to think about how you phrase them, how you arrange them. What I'm always doing is I get all my arguments on some Post-its, and then I rearrange all the Post-its until I think that's the best way to show the story or to tell the story. And then I'm leaving the office, and on the next day, it's still lying on my table or on the whiteboard, And then I'm standing in front of it and say, oh, no, I think I have even a better way. So I rearrange everything again. And if you do this 2 or 3 times, you find the simple in the complex, you find the unexpected things, you find the novelty, and you see how you get a nice story throughout your whole paper that you're not boring anyone. And this is the highest level, basically, in research to make sure that the reviewer or the reader keeps with you for the whole time. So basically, it's all about the story. And the last advice I want to give you, even if you look back in half a year and say, oh yeah, he told us something about success as an abbreviation, but I don't know what the C was standing for or the E was standing for, please remind yourself on the first S, the simple. The simple is the most important thing. If you go home today and say to your children, your mother, your grandmother, oh, I'm writing on a paper today, and they ask you, what is it about? You should be able to answer it in 1 or 2 sentences with the simplest idea behind it. And we have now, we are looking forward to a nice time of the year where we can train it, because on Christmas, you see a lot of relatives who you don't see a lot of times in the year, and they will all ask you, Anna, what are you doing now at university? Or Kirsten, what are you doing? Or Carmel, what are you doing with a PhD now? And then you have 1 or 2 sentences to convince them that this is cool what you're doing. And if you ask one, or if you say 1 or 2 questions, and the answer you get is, oh, that's nice. Where is the wine? Then you did something wrong. If you tell the story and then they say, oh, that's interesting, can you give me more details? Then you have the jackpot, at least in storytelling. It might happen that you then have to discuss a lot of things with your aunt and uncle, who you not even like. So be aware of who you want to make curious about your work. But generally, this should be the idea. Ask yourself, what is your answer if your, let's say, children, grandchildren, uncle, aunt, grandma, or something like this, when they ask you, what are you doing at the moment in your job? This is the thing you have to answer. What is your simple research question, your simple hypothesis, or your simple story? And now, this is an exercise. So we are training now for Christmas, because I was talking now 45 minutes and I need a glass of water. You have talked not a lot, but you can talk now. We are 36 people. So I get you in breakout rooms now of 3 people. And the only thing you should do is tell the other 2 people in 2 sentences, not more. What is your actual story at the moment at the university or in your research? Just take one topic and say, okay, make it simple that everyone understands, because it might happen that now an engineer is getting into the same room like a person working in tourism and at the same who is working in social science. And I hope that you're not getting in the room with me, because you know already a lot of stories from me. Then you're bored, but then I'm listening to your stories. Okay, like last week as well, before you tell the people it's going into breakout rooms, everyone is fleeing. We were just 36, now we are 32. So 4 people said, no, I don't want to say anything. So we get you back 32. Let's make 10 rooms. Then we are 10 rooms. Yeah, 3 people in each room. And I hope that in each room there is at least 2 people who are online and who are still listening and who still want to talk. That's important. And then we see each other at 10 to 3. So I give you 7 minutes. Everyone has 2 sentences. And then I get you back. Let's see if this works. Okay, everything was created, and now you should be moved to the other rooms. And you don't have to do anything, I get you back. Yeah, looks good. First people are leaving. Perfect. Okay, hi, Nico, Laurin, and Eva. Who is here? Who can switch on the camera and the video? Anyone here of you three? Okay, first one went left, Laurin. Nico or Eva? Okay, Laurin is back.
Hello? Can you
Hello? Yes, now I can hear you, Laurin.
with this program? I don't know, camera and microphone are only working if I'm pressing buttons.
Okay, but I can hear you now.
All right. May I quickly tell you about my research project about dystopian communities, ethics and politics of the post-apocalypse. So I'm really studying the philosophies, the various philosophies behind survivalism. That is cultures that are preparing for some kind of crisis or decline. And my main hypothesis is that these philosophies are also maybe from different ideological standpoints, all advocating some kind of politics of retreat and an ethics of humanization.
How do you said one interesting word at the beginning, dystopia.
Yeah,
Did you?
dystopian communities.
Yeah, how do you define a dystopian community for me? Because I'm not a social scientist.
So a dystopian community is a negative utopia. It is the imagination of the worst and the imagination of and expectation and fear, anxiety of decline or the an event that is devastating and all changing.
Okay, so good. Now you said the imagination of the worst. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, that was for me personally. As I said, I'm not a social scientist. For me, this was the best description of a dystopia I have heard so far, and also I have heard the last 3 minutes from you, because this is really broken down to the simplest way how to explain it. And if we think now on Christmas, if you say to someone, yeah, I'm working on dystopian communities, and then the person says, yeah, but what are dystopian communities? And say, yeah, a dystopia is the imagination of the worst. Just think about the Christmas tree over there is just falling right now on grandma. That's imagination of the worst.
Okay.
And now think about how the community could be in its worst state. And then I think everyone gets your idea. I like it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Who is Rico or Nico, sorry, Nico or Eva? Are you here or do you listen? Are you just logged in?
Excuse me.
Ah, yes.
Yes,
Eva.
I'm in, but I'm going to get my daughter, so I'm listening now.
Ah,
Sorry.
okay. That's fine as
Sorry.
well. That's fine
Thank
as well.
you. Thank you.
Nico. Okay, no one. Ah, we have another one. Carlotta is here now with us. Now she's gone again. Laurin, where are you working? Are you a PhD student?
Well, I'm a postdoc at the Institute of Philosophy at the University of Graz.
Of Graz. Ah, so you got into the into our workshop based on the European university you have, and then you're in this mentoring program for postdocs.
Exactly.
Ah, okay, yeah, because I had a meeting with the two people who are responsible at the University of Graz. Tell me with the names or help me with the names.
Johanna, Yasmin.
No, who is responsible for the mentoring program?
Yeah, Johanna and Yasmin.
Really? Okay, could
Oh,
be.
maybe there might
Yeah,
be somebody.
Yasmin could be. Yeah, because I told them, because we are a European university as well, and I told them that we have a mentoring program for students, so for master students, and you have the ones for postdoc, and then we shared if one of our workshops might be interesting for you as well. And then they told us, okay, they send it to their email recipient list, because if someone wants to attend, then you're obviously also allowed to attend workshops we in our European universities offer. But it's
Yeah,
nice that it works.
Mhm.
It's always good to have other people as well, and not just the people from our universities. Perfect. Good. So we have another minute. I still didn't have a water. Now I have a water. And what is your goal? Becoming a professor or being a postdoc and then going to politics or industry?
No, I don't want to go into politics or industry, but I'm also not super sure if I want to be a professor if I look at the workload and the panic of some of my colleagues. So, yeah,
Okay. You're
at the
still in the
moment,
finding phase.
to secure some funding to do my own research and just write and publish stuff. And yeah, but probably the ultimate goal is also to get a professorship. I also applied to some, but so far I haven't been successful. But yeah,
Oh.
habilitation. This is my habilitation project,
Okay.
and it's coming along somehow.
Okay. See, I applied for at 8 universities and just got rejections. And then in 1 month, I started my habilitation at the University of Bayreuth. I got an invitation to the Technical University of Clausthal for a full professorship and one to FHV for a full professorship. And within 1 month, I signed the contract here, and I stopped my habilitation again because I said that I don't need it anymore. There can be months where you say, okay, nothing is going around, and then there will be another month where you say, oh my God, what's going on now? So I wish you all the best for the future on the way to a professorship.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Then we get the rooms closed and get back to the other ones, to the main room. Let's see if this works. Yeah. Yeah, everyone is coming back. Hello. Oh, familiar faces. Jan, you're here as well. Now I'm getting nervous. So far I was quite relaxed, but now I'm getting nervous.
Sorry, Marcus.
Okay. So let's see. Now it's interesting because we got 32 people in the rooms and 24 came back. So somewhere had to be a black hole somewhere.
They're at the pub.
They're at the pub. Yeah, I think so. This is when I get the list of attendees, I always have a look how many Irish people are there, and then you have to delete half of them because they're in the pub. No, perfect. I think a few people left in the breakout rooms. That's always the case because then they know, oh my God, I now have to say something. But I hope that at least the people who are here now and back, that you all had at least one person in the room you could talk to. Maybe it was a person you already know, maybe it was a new person. I had a nice chat with a person, not even from RunEU, but from another European university. So that was quite nice, I think. Good. So the first hour is gone. we have another hour, and the next hour will be filled by the topic of how important is an overall structure for our theses, publications, and research proposals, and then why is a funnel a good picture. I have not decided yet if we go the whole way through, so it would be again, I think, half an hour to 40 minutes, and then do another exercise, or if we get an exercise before, this is something I will decide on the way how it is, because this time the storytelling advanced is the first time I teach it in a workshop. The storytelling introduction last week I did already last year, so it's a little bit of testing today what works and what does not work. I hope that's fine for you. Yeah, why? The actual question is always the why or the how important. And I just got a few sentences from rejection letters, either rejection letters I got or rejection letters I wrote. And it's always the same. The work does not fit to the scope. The work is not novel enough. The introduction is more a literature review. The research question remains unclear. The contribution to the community remains unclear. The methods are not suitable. And now think about how many of these sentences you got in your past as a rejection letter. Yes, I see nodding. And now think about how often did you think, oh my God, did they even read my paper? Obviously, it fits to the scope. Obviously, there is a clear research question. Obviously, I wrote that the contribution to the community is exactly this. And the problem here is, you are right. And the reviewer is right as well. Because the reviewer did not see it. Because you hid it somewhere or have hidden it somewhere in the text. And this is a main problem we all have. We are writing our papers, we are all under stress, and then we are not thinking about the other side. So how would I read my own paper if I am a reviewer? Would I really say, yes, it's novel? Would I really say, yes, there is a research question? And if I do not find the research question, because I do not find in the whole introduction a question mark, I don't have to complain that the reviewer says the research question remains unclear. If I never use the word novel, yeah, it's far harder to see for the reviewer what is the novel part. We always tried in the last years not to use the word novel, because that's like, reviewer, look here, that's novel. But you can say for the first time in our community, we could prove. Or the thing we always understood differently is now finally solved, or something like this. That's the novel part. Tell them that this is the novel part and get them into the right part of your paper to see it. And therefore, keep in mind that all stories have a structure, and the structure is O, C, A, and R. What is the structure of a normal paper? The normal paper structure is introduction, methods or materials, results, discussion, and solution. So you might say, yeah, but what is OCAR now? It's almost the same, but OCAR is a concept you can also use for every single sentence and for every single subparagraph and for every single sub-story. And this is what I want to show you right now. The opening is always, whom is the story about? Who are the characters? Where does it take place? What do you need to understand about the situation to follow the story? And what is the larger problem you're addressing? That's a good and broad opening. I always tell the people, because there are small openings as well, just at the beginning of a paper, the first sentence or the first two sentences. If you're publishing in engineering and after the first two sentences of your abstract, the reader does not know if you're publishing a simulation work or an experimental work, you have done something wrong. Because you have not told about the characters. You have not told whom is the story about. If you write in the first sentence, we are presenting a simulation work on thermal power plants. Then the people know the character is the thermal power plant and it's about simulation. And this is something you have to keep in mind. We go into more detail in the second part, so these are just a few questions you have to ask yourself. The challenge, what do your characters need to accomplish? What specific questions do you propose to answer? You see, again, it's a little bit science fiction. If you have a hero introduced in the first sentence of your book, you have to tell latest on the second page what this person has to do in the future. So what is the idea the hero has to do in your whole novel or your whole book, etc.? Here the same. If I say I have a simulation work or a thermal power plant, what does we need to accomplish? We have to reduce the maintenance times or the downtime times. That's the idea of the character. And what specific questions do you propose to answer? This is exactly the research question at the end. The research question was, how do we get the breakdown times of thermal power plants reduced? That was our research question. You can be even more specific. You can say, how can we reduce the breakdown times of thermal power plants by 30%? This is even a stronger research question, because the reviewer could say, yeah, now it's getting interesting. Because if you just say we want to reduce the breakout times, and the reviewer himself or herself says, yeah, I've done this in my past as well, you can get it down by 2 or 3%, but not more, then he or she might think, yeah, but that's not a gap in literature. But if you say we want to achieve 30%, then they might say, okay, that's interesting. We had once in my former career at the University of Bayreuth, we wanted to set up a microturbine for waste heat recovery. And it was always in literature that a microturbine can never reach isentropic efficiencies of more than 70%. That was just impossible, everyone said. And we wrote a paper where it said, we proved the first time that we achieve 75%. If we had said, we want to publish our work about an efficient microturbine, everyone would say, yeah, but what is efficient? As we said, it's 75%. All the reviewers said, okay, now I'm curious. How did they really manage to get 75% efficiency? And then the action. So I told them, we are able to get 75% efficiency. And then everyone asked, yeah, and how did you do it? So what happens to address the challenge? What work did you really do? Did you do a simulation work? Did you set up a test rig? How was your measurement set up, etc.? Or in the proposal, what work do you hope to do? Because here again, we had once a research project where we promised to build a water treatment system where we said that we want to split up oil and water 50-50% to an oil phase of 97% and a water phase of 3%. If we just had submitted a proposal where we said, yeah, we want to achieve that we get out of the 50-50, we want to get a clear oil phase, then everyone would have said, okay, what is a clear oil phase? But we said exactly 79% to 3%. So here again, specific, and then everyone asked us, okay, that's interesting. If you manage this, we give you the 300,000 euro. But how do you want to achieve this? And then you have to get your methods into it, your materials, and your idea how to solve the problem. That's the action part. And afterwards, at the end, you have the resolution part. So how have the characters and their world changed as a result of the action? So it does not make sense to say, okay, now we have 79 to 3%. But we could say in the proposal that if we get the 97% oil fraction, you can use it as recycling oil. And at the moment, the 50-50 mixture is just burned in the cement industry and have a lot of CO2 emissions. So we said if we achieve 97 to 3, we get the clear water phase into the normal water treatment system of the community, and the 97% we can really use as a recycling oil, reducing CO2 emissions. That's basically the result for the future. And then what did you learn from your work? What is the community doing? So we told the community, use this temperature, use this bubble size, then you can actually get to 97%. And we also made suggestions, or the whole group of us made suggestions how we could improve it even better. And now the question is, so I think that's obvious. You have to get a good opening, then you have the challenge. So your research question, you tell the people what you did and then what the results are. And why is a funnel a good picture now for this story? Because the opening is mostly really broad. Then you have to get it down until your challenge, so a specific research question, and then you have to get via the action to a broader resolution. So the idea is not to stop here and saying, okay, we achieved 97.3%. The idea is to get the funnel open again and saying what this means. This means that the CO2 emissions are reduced. This means that the whole shipping industry is getting more efficient or stuff like this. So you get it broader here again, and you get it broad here. And in between, you have to be specific, because if not, your whole paper is blurry. You're talking about too many things, but not in detail, and you will not get published. So here you can be specific, but here you might get a little bit broader, and here also a little bit broader. And the key thing is here the challenge. You have to make sure that you have a clear research question or a clear hypothesis. And now I'm coming back, as I promised, to introduction, materials, results, discussion. So a typical paper structure, and it's not a contradiction. OCAR is working for all sentences, sub-stories, etc. IMRAD, like it's called, introduction, materials, methods, results, and discussion, is just working for a paper. But it's the same. What are you talking in your introduction? In the introduction, you start with the larger problem, you get some context, you get some state of the art, and afterwards you have your research question and your hypothesis. And as soon as you have done this, you tell the people how you solved the problem. What material did you use? What did you do? How did you do it? What did you find out? The results. What does it mean? The discussion, so that at the end, in the conclusion, you can say, okay, that's the take-home messages you should have. And so you see there is no contradiction between OCAR and the typical structure you have in your paper. It's just a little bit a different way how to present it. And now I go into a little bit more detail or show you a few examples. I try to show examples and not go into too much detail, but the question is always, how broad is your opening? So we are now in the introduction. Let's think about the introduction of your last paper. What was, maybe you do it actually. I give you 2 minutes because I have to close the window anyway. I give you 2 minutes, get out your last paper you have written or the last paper you have read, and read the first sentence of the introduction. If you don't have a paper, just get to Science Direct and download the first paper you see. And get the first sentence of the introduction, and I close my window in the office. Okay, and now think about on a scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is basically you can write this sentence for all papers who are published in my community. And 0, which is that sentence is so specific that it can just be written by this single paper. On which range you are? Maybe you just write it in the chat. So 10 is so general that you can use it basically for every paper, and 0 is so specific that you say, okay, this is just for this paper possible. Okay, 9, 10, that's what I expected, 8, 10. I'm coming, as you know, from thermal engineering. You have no idea how often I have read the sentence in review processes. The Kyoto Protocol states, or CO2 emissions worldwide increased, or the climate change, etc. And I always think, yeah, I know. I have read hundreds and hundreds of times. Why not starting a little bit different? So basically, before you come to your research questions, you have to decide how broad is your first sentence. And if I'm a reviewer and I read hundreds and hundreds of times about the Kyoto Protocol, I'm bored after the first sentence. If you say, okay, everyone knows about the Kyoto Protocol, everyone knows about climate change, get already to the next sentence and say, our product can reduce 1% of worldwide CO2 emissions. Then it's far more curious. So you start instead of starting really, really broad, you can also start really, really narrow. You could say, okay, don't care about climate change and all this stuff, because remind yourself, if you write an introduction to a paper, you have basically 1 page. You should never have an introduction more than 1 page or more than 1.5 pages. So you have 1 page and you have to convince the reviewer that you filling a gap. So if you talk the first 5 sentences about climate change and stuff like this, and then the reviewer notice, oh, you're doing something in bioconcrete, or you're doing something in biomass power plants instead of coal-fired power plants, then you have lost 5 sentences to convince the person that it's necessary. If you start right away with biomass power plants or with bioconcrete, you gain some time to here say, okay, if I have this 1 page, I can go into more detail on the gaps. And that's the interesting thing. You have to tell the people that there are gaps in literature you want to solve. If you lose all this part, you have lost 1/3 of your introduction just for climate change, where everyone knows that we have climate change. Obviously, it could also happen that someone tells you for a research proposal, you are just allowed to write 1,000 characters as abstract for your research proposals. Then you don't have the whole page, you just have half a page. Then it's even more obvious if you start then with climate change to come to the part here where you have your gaps. It's really a limited amount of time or of words. So think about how broad you have to be at the beginning. I always suggest be as specific as possible, because all the phrases in the first sentence, like all the 9s and 10s, Laurin said he had a 5. That's a really good number to become a 5 there. All the others are more on 7, 10, 8. So don't be too broad at the beginning. What we have to achieve is, or in the opening, everyone is thinking about the introduction. However, think about your last paper. You had the title. The title is an opening. You had the first sentence of the abstract. That's an opening. You have the first sentence of the introduction. That's an opening. And you have the first sentence of the conclusion. That's an opening as well. So you have 4 times to open the people to your paper, because I don't know how you read papers, but the first thing I have looked on the paper is the research question, and afterwards the conclusion. I want to see what the people concluded, because if the conclusion is interesting for me, I have a look on the whole paper. And now again, take the same paper you have taken right now, and please have a look on the title, the first sentence of the abstract, the first sentence of the introduction, and the first sentence of the conclusion. And check the last part here. Be consistent. So if you're really broad in the title and really specific in the first sentence of the abstract or the other way around, then you might have a problem. So please have a look on these 4 sentences and see if at least the main character is in all of the 4 sentences. Like I said a few minutes ago, bioconcrete. We have a group working on or a PhD student at FHV. She is working on bioconcrete. So bioconcrete, in my opinion, should be in the title. It should be in the first sentence of the abstract, the introduction, and the conclusion. Have a look in your paper now. What is the main character and in which of the 4 parts it is? Okay, and then write it in the chat again. Just write down if it's in all 4, the main character. If you found it in all 4, write 4. If you found it in 3 of the ones, write 3. If you found it in 2, write 2. And if you think, okay, the main character is basically in just 1, and that's in the title. Okay, all 4, 4, 2, 3, 3. 1, 4. Lauren, if you're taking your own paper, it's a really good paper because you had the lowest number right now in the first question, and now you have the highest number, and that's a good sign. But you see that the papers are totally different, and they're still published. That's important because everyone asks me, Marcus, if I'm doing what you tell me, get I published all my papers? Of course not. But I think the chances are higher to get your paper published if you think about the few things Schimmel wrote in his book. So do not bore people, make them curious. So don't start with climate change. Manage the expectation of people as well. I really hate papers where I read the first or the title and I think, oh, cool. This is a combination of simulation and experimental work. And then I read the whole paper and then I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for the experimental work, and it's never coming. And there are papers out there which are like this, and I'm totally bored about these papers. So always make sure that if the person reads your title and the person has its mind now, okay, this is what I can expect. And the person is going now to the conclusion, and there's something totally different there. You lost the person. They will never cite your paper. They will never read your paper. But make clear that the expectation you arose in the title and in your research questions are also fulfilled then in the conclusions. What we always do is, before we submit the paper, the last thing we are doing is we have a look on the conclusion and see if we answered the questions we had in at the end of the introduction, or if you have a clear sentence, if the hypothesis is correct or not restated. So the expectation management is here really, really important. So a good opening specifies the topic, frames the problem, and introduces the main characters. A bad opening, that's also always important. Think about bad openings as well, because then you can learn something. It misdirects the reader. If you're talking about simulation in the first sentence and then you publish an experimental work, you have a problem. Or omits direction and all. And that's what I mean with the first sentence. If it's climate change, I have no idea where the paper is going. If I'm saying we publish or bioconcrete is a viable way to reduce CO2 emissions in residential homes, I know exactly where the paper is going. I still don't know if it's experimental or simulation. That could be the second sentence. But I know I'm not talking about CO2 emissions of electromobility. But if the first sentence is CO2 emissions in the whole world rose by 2% in the year 2023, I say, yeah, that's nice, but are you talking now about electric vehicles or about residential homes or about new heating systems? I have no idea. So this is what I already said. Give them a clear direction, the reader. Afterwards, the funnel. A good funnel leads to an excited reviewer. So what you have to manage, and with funnel, I'm sorry, I'm going back. With funnel, I mean here the start of the funnel. So opening to challenge, until challenge, this part. It's your job to tell the reader or the reviewer, yes, this is a huge problem we face in our community. So if I'm sitting there and saying it's a huge problem to really measure the humidity of a saturated saturated stream, and I know this, and someone is telling me this is the problem we solve, I say, yes, that's a huge problem. Thank God that someone is solving this problem now. Or the other way around. Oh, interesting. I've never thought about this, that this is a problem. So if I have measured a lot of times the humidity of an airflow, and someone is telling me that's not so easy, and I think, well, why it's not so easy? I did it last week. Then I get a curiosity as well, and I read this paper. Or the last thing is, oh my God, we don't even know this in the community. So if I say, I have worked now for 10 years in thermal power plants, and we don't even know if we can measure exactly the pressure before the turbine, then I would say, okay, we should know this in our community. And I also read the paper, cite the paper, accept the proposal or something like this. So what you have to ensure, and again, it's your job, not the job of the reader, not the job of the reviewer. You have to convince the reader and the reviewer that your work contributes to the community. That's important. If they think that's just another paper on a topic, I have worked 10 years in organic Rankine cycle, and in organic Rankine cycle, you have to find an optimal fluid. And I tell you, I've read so many people on optimal fluid selection. And at one point, I just said, okay, everything is said now. We don't need an optimal fluid selection just for a little bit of another temperature. So please, because there's no more contribution to the community. Frequent mistakes, again, I always show how to do it and how not to do it. You fail to define the specific problem. So at the end of the introduction, at the end of the funnel, if the reviewer says, I don't see a problem, then you're out. You fail to value the solution. At the end of the conclusion, you have to make clear, if we know this, then we can stay totally, or we can do totally different things in our community. What's also a problem? You state the solution before or without framing the exact problem. Some people say, oh yeah, to solve the problem of grid simulation, this is this and this and this, and then they say what the problem exactly is. So stick exactly. Introduction is always showing what is done, showing where the gaps are, showing what the problem is, and then what your solution is. Don't write the solution after half of the introduction. And this is sometimes I see something like this. It's like we suggest to use a simulation survey or to use a large social survey with 1,000 people in a written way to get this information. And then 2 sentences later, I see the problem statement. That's not the idea. Always frame the problem first and then go to the solution. Another thing, you write a literature survey review instead of an introduction. That's a most problematic. That's a thing that happens a lot of times. You have to focus on gaps, not what has been done. Why is it still so common out there? Because students come to me then and say, Marcus, see, this is a really well-known paper. It's cited a lot of times. And it's actually, if you write a literature review. And I say, yes, that is like this. But that does not mean that we have to do the same mistakes. It's a good paper. I don't admit that. But we have to make sure that we are standing out of the crowd. So please focus on the gaps. And here again, why we are doing it. If you're a PhD student in an early stage, you think about, okay, who is in my community? Who could review my paper? That's my first paper. I want to get it published. Obviously, you try to cite as many potential reviewers as possible. Because then they are reading it and they say, oh, I'm cited. That's nice. And they are positive. But it doesn't make any sense because you cannot cite everyone and you don't know who gets your paper. And all the really famous people in your community will most certainly not get your paper because they're getting hundreds of questions if they can do a review, and they reject and reject and reject, and they just accept, let's say, once in a month to review a paper. So the chances that you get the Nobel Prize winner of your field and you have to cite him or her, don't think about it. Here again, small exercise. Again, write in the chat, how many citations do you have in the paper in the introduction, and how many in total? So 2 numbers. The first one is introduction, the second one is in total. So you just have to have a look on the last citation in the introduction, and at the end of the paper, the last number in the literature list, in the references. So please again write in the chat the 2 numbers. Okay, that's okay. Okay, good. The standard out there is the thing Luan said. Luan, I don't know. 40 out of 45 are in the introduction. That's a typical introduction. Cite a lot in the introduction, and then afterwards, when it comes to methods where you compare your work to previous works, there is not even cited at all. Another question, or just look it up, you don't have to write it in the chat. How many manifold citations do you have? So not one sentence, brackets 1 sentence, brackets 2, but one sentence like organic Rankine cycling is used in biomass power plants 1 to 7. So these double citations or manifold citations, think about how many you have in the introduction, because that's the typical way how to get a lot of citations. Because you cannot tell about 40, the highest number is 47. If you have 47 references in your introduction, you basically should have given 47 gaps in literature. It's impossible. Therefore, I did it in the past as well. Now I'm thinking more about give the most important 15 to 20 papers and state exactly what we don't know instead of we know. Because the 47 here and the 40 and even the 32, okay, it's a long introduction, that's a reason. But everything above 30 is just telling the people what we know instead of telling the people what we don't know. And the good introduction is telling the people what we don't know. Good. The challenge. When writing your challenge, you must choose the structure of a research question or of a hypothesis. And I always suggest people use additionally either bullet points or make a break between the last paragraph of your introduction and your research question that it stands out. The good thing is a hypothesis makes your research question to a falsifiable prediction. So make sure that you make, or you can always switch it around. Here the question or the thing I had before, I said 75%, here I used 70%. So a research question would be, how can the isentropic efficiency of a small scale or a sea turbine be increased via optimal turbine geometry? Hypothesis: optimal turbine geometry can increase the isentropic efficiency of a small scale or sea turbine to more than 70%. And this is here, if I had put the 70% in a research question, it would be the 100% the same. But the most important thing is at the end, either you have a research question, this is something you can answer, or you have a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is always, yes, it's true, we made it, or no, it's not true. And don't care. Sometimes a hypothesis where you say in the conclusion, it's not possible, is a good paper. You don't have to always go into the direction that it works. Sorry, Mary, I didn't see your hand up, but now I see it. You have a question.
Yes, yeah, I'm not sure. So on the number of citations, so you're saying around 30 and that most of them should be in the introduction, is it?
No. So first of all, it's totally different from community to community. That's important. I'm talking about engineering. So have a look on your community, but don't think that everything your community did in the past is good. That's also important. What I always see for papers where I say that's just a literature survey is that most of the citations are in the introduction. And it's a lot of citations in the introduction, and there are a lot of manifold citations. That's never a good sign. If you have something like this, it's more like, yeah, I just put everything which I have in my Zotero account into the introduction. If I state with every single citation also a problem or a gap, let's say if we say here, but the turbines again, if we say, okay, the following 3 authors communicated that it's just possible to reach 68%. However, colleague X and colleague Y stated that optimal turbine geometry might be a solution to get over the 70%. And then we say we have a test rig now which proves that we get over 70%. Then you have perfectly combined state-of-the-art with the gap, every more than 70%, but also the idea how you got to the point that you said it must be possible, and then your solution. If you start here, maybe this is also something you can look up in your paper. Have a look how many of the citations were in the first paragraph of the introduction. Because I come back to this one. Oops, sorry. If you have a really broad statement here, like climate change or the automobile industry is problematic for climate change, you can give either one reference or you can give 20 papers. And some people use then 20 papers because they say, oh, then I have cited 20 papers. And it looks like I'm really scientific. No, it's not. I'm looking for papers who just cite the papers that are really relevant for their work and get rid of everything else. There might be reviewers who think differently. There are still reviewers out there, I'm 100% sure, especially one of the old career people who say every paper with less than 50 citations, I do not even have a look on because that's not scientifically enough. But it shifts a little bit. And therefore you have to know your community, but don't always think that which is out there and published is a good paper. There are a lot of crappy papers out there.
I know. Yeah.
Carmen, you have a question as well?
Yeah, Marcus, just really quickly, because I'm taking mad notes here. Are you going to be sending us the PowerPoint? Because there's so much good information here.
Yes, we can send the PowerPoint as well. It will be definitely recorded and it will be put on the Cloud of Knowledge portal of RunEU. But I will ask Ali to also link the PowerPoint, or I just send it to everyone who attended. I get an attendance list and then I send it to everyone.
That'd be lovely. Thanks.
Yeah. Or I put it at the end in the chat. That's the easiest way. We will find it to that the PowerPoint gets to you. And if not, write me an email and I send it directly.
Okay.
Good. Challenge. Yes. And again, curiosity. You have to make your readers curious. The challenge, again, we are doing research to gain new knowledge, not just results. So science in Latin is knowledge and not results. So please phrase here. I don't even think it's perfect because no one knows that no one reached 70%. The community knew. That's fine. But try to make the people curious about how you achieved it. Here we could say, okay, the knowledge is that optimal turbine geometry is responsible for 70%. If we just had said we are able to build a turbine with 70%, then to be honest, we would have focused on the result, but not on the knowledge. we showed the people now that the knowledge lies in the optimal turbine geometry. So don't just go into the result, go also about into the knowledge your reader and reviewer must find, the new knowledge in your work. Here, another example from my past, I said it a few minutes ago, the optimal fluid selection. I have read a lot of papers where the result was that they had a new fluid. And I always said, yeah, but that's not new knowledge. We all know all the fluids now. It's just a result that in your specific case, fluid 1 is better than fluid 2. But there's no new knowledge for the community. Then action. Action is everything between your challenge and your resolution, everything between your research question and your conclusion. So theory, methods, results, discussions. And here also, please know your community. In some communities, there is a chapter that's called results and discussion. In other communities, you always have to split results and discussion. So here, please know your community. And to be honest, here I would say, do it like your community. Even if you think it's not the best case, if everyone is doing it, do it, but don't take everything for granted. But especially with the separation of results and discussion, some, especially in natural scientists, they still go the way, first of all, they present their results and then they discuss it. In engineering, it's always a combination. Think about, I'm not so sure how it's in social science. Maybe in social science, you first show what the results of the survey is, and then in another chapter, you discuss it. That could be, maybe you combine those chapters, but here you just should know your community. But apart from this, compared to introduction and how a research question is formulated, the rules in action are relatively vague. They are not quite big rules. It depends on the community. But still, two things I want to give you on the way. The action part is about storytelling as well. Let the story guide you on what you write. So the story knows exactly what must be told and what can be omitted without harm. To all the PhD students and basically to all of us, if we were in the lab and we measured something and we got 5 diagrams, we want to show the 5 diagrams because the 5 diagrams were work. But it's not good to show the 5 diagrams. Take the most 2 important diagrams and get rid of the other 3. So make sure that you know exactly what you need for your story, because obviously it's really hard to get rid of the 3 diagrams and saying, okay, I have done 2 months of work and I can now throw it into the bin. But it's even better to throw 3 diagrams in the bin, publish 2, get the community on a new level, then try to publish all 5 and get a rejection letter because the reviewer says the first 3 does not fit to the story. You have to throw something research into the bin. Every one of us knows, everyone did it, and everyone does not like it, but we still have to do it. That's what the last thing is. Murder your darlings, even if you think that months of work are lost by doing so. If you think that in murdering your darlings, or that murdering your darlings is the story itself, publish a totally different paper. Tell the community what you did for a year and what did not work. Because another PhD student might sit somewhere in America, sitting in front of the same problem, and you know that he can work for a year, but he will never manage to do it because you know why. Then please publish it. Publish a fuck-up story. Don't publish always the success stories. And here again, we have now, you know it, in every single country, we have from the entrepreneurial side, fuck-up nights. We should have fuck-up journals, to be honest. Or every journal should accept at least one fuck-up, sorry for the wording, but it's used from the entrepreneurial side. Each and every single journals should accept at least one fuck-up paper per issue. That the people say, yes, something can go wrong. Very good here, go to conferences. On conferences, they are not so eager to always have the success stories because you can discuss them with the people and tell them that it did not work and why it did not work. Looks good from the time. A resolution. People especially remember the last words they have read. If you close a book, which is 500 pages long, you basically, if it's a good book, you know the first page and you know the last page. Or the last sentence, last page. Obviously, a novel everyone knows, Harry Potter. Everyone knows that in the last chapter of Harry Potter, they are standing on the train station again 20 years later with their children. That's it. Do you know what happens in the last book of Harry Potter in chapter 30 of 37? No. But you know the last chapter and you know the last, maybe not the last sentence, but at least what happens at the end. So the resolution is your chance to place take-home messages. And don't try to make 7, 8, 9 bullet points. They won't remember you in the next day. Give them 1 thing or 2 things or 3 things, not more than 3 things they should remember. And weak solutions, they fail to frame the conclusions. So they just make bullet points and state results again. Also, don't state new results in your resolution. That's important. The resolution has to fix everything, but not new ideas. New ideas have to be somewhere else. Fail to close the gap to the opening. So that's what I said a few minutes ago. We always have a look at the end in the conclusion. Did we really answer the research question? Because sometimes you get lost in your writing process, and then you see, oh, I didn't answer the research question, although I thought I did in the conclusion. And this is also something a lot of people do, and I don't, or a little bit I know why, but it's not good. Don't focus on the missing parts of the paper. Sometimes I see conclusions where there is a first sentence, then there are 3 bullet points, and then there is, in further work, there will be done this, and this. And I always think, why didn't you do it before you published the paper if it's so important? Obviously, what the scientists want to do, the PhDs, they want to avoid that the reviewer criticizes that they have not done it. So they say, oh, that's always for the next paper and the next paper. Obviously, sometimes you need that trick for 1 or 2 things, because we just published something on the predictive maintenance, and we first of all tried to publish just 1 power plant. And then we said I think we said, or at least we thought about saying it, in the conclusion that we want to adapt it to different power plants in the future. Yeah, we got a rejection letter where the reviewer said it's not quite sure if it's adaptable. So we have to adapt it before. Now we published it again, or we try to publish it again, but don't focus on the missing parts. Sometimes I put the missing parts in the last chapter of the discussion. Because there, it's a little bit hidden, it's still there, a good reviewer sees it, but if the reviewer is ready with your paper, reads the last 3 sentences and there are just gaps and missing parts, and then he or she starts to write your review, it's more likely that he or she rejects your paper instead of accepting your paper. So this is something I hide sometimes in the end of the discussion. Now again, take a minute, have a look on your paper, go to the conclusion part, and see if the last 2 sentences are a success or further work. Because the last sentence is the one who is reminded, and if the last sentence is further work, they know what you want to do in future and not what you want to do now. An interesting option would also be use the first sentence of your conclusion. Because you could say, although we have not adapted our method to other power plants, we still could prove. And then 3 bullet points. Then you change the order of the thing. That's the same, my PhD students know. I always have on conferences, at the end, you always have conclusion and further work. There are 2 slides. I always have before I come to my conclusions, I want to tell you what I do in the future. So I have the future work first and then stop with the conclusion. I just changed the 2 slides and it works perfectly because then the people go out and say, oh yeah, they did a lot. And otherwise they would go out and say, oh, they want to do a lot. That's different. So a strong resolution summarizes the key results, connects them to the specific research question and put everything in perspective to the bigger question. So tell the readers how their understanding of the topic has advanced. Here, taking the microturbine again, I should have stated we built a microturbine with 75.8%, and we proved that optimum, how did I call it? Optimal turbine geometry still gives the room for improving it to 80% or something like this. And then you see the bigger understanding. So far, everyone saw that 70% it's done. No more is possible. We showed that with our results, it could go in the direction of 80%, and we managed to do 75. That's then a really, really good resolution. And just to make sure, I have written a lot of really crappy resolutions in my past, and they were still published. So don't go now to my Google Scholar account, download the first 3 papers and say, oh, now I have a blueprint of writing good publications. No, it's not like this. I'm always learning with every single paper I write with my PhD students or postdocs. Okay, so now last 2 slides, I think. And then I have definitely to send you the presentations because I have some exercises which you can do on your own as well. And we cannot do it today, but I send it to you, then you can do it in the next weeks if you want to get back to the seminar. But what can we learn from chess players? We can learn from chess players or science fiction 3 things. Open strong, open with a clear idea, and end strong. Finish your work. What do I mean? You know, if you're playing chess, it's possible to get from here to here at the beginning. It's not possible to get the queen somewhere at the beginning. However, when you write a paper, you're allowed to get the queen somewhere. So if you write in the first sentence of your introduction that you managed to write to build a microturbine with 75%, no one can tell you you're not allowed to do so. In chess, if you say, oh, I put the queen here in your first time, then someone would say, okay, do you know the rules of chess? But in writing paper, you can be unexpected. You can do something totally different to your community. If you stand out at the end and you get the funding or you get your paper published, everything is fine. However, it's risky, obviously, but take the risk. I showed last week that just for one specific community, there are 1 million papers published every single year. You have to stand out. So make clear you have a good and open, a good and strong opening, but also with a clear idea. If you put, or if you go in your opening from here to here, you should just not do it because it's allowed. You should do it because you know exactly what you think that the other one is doing right next and what your next step is. So if you write a sentence in your publication, especially in the introduction, you should always think about what is the next sentence. Do I really need this sentence to introduce the next sentence, to introduce the next paragraph? So make a strategic opening. Sometimes a strategic opening might be really broad, sometimes really specific, but you have to know how you continue. And what I often see, and what I still do wrong, I write the first sentence and it's too broad. And then I write and write and write. And then the paper is finished and I publish it like this. No, go back and see if every single sentence was good enough to be in the paper. So maybe you think at the beginning I have to be broad, and then you change during the introduction at some point to a more specific strategy. you have to rewrite your first sentence again. So it's always writing and rewriting. And this strategic opening is a really important thing. Sometimes it's good to tell about climate change, but sometimes it's good to just give them the result in the first sentence. And then please end strong. The last sentence, the people hear from you, or the last sentence they read, they will keep in their mind, and it also finishes your work. I don't like papers where you have read the whole paper and you think, okay, it was a really nice research question, a really nice hypothesis, but it looks like the paper is not finished. So here again with chess, you can play chess for hours and hours and think you're ahead, but you have to finish it. Chess is never ended before you have really finished it. And here again, end strong, finish your work with a really good last sentence or a really good last paragraph. And that's basically it. So to summarize it, if you go out now from this seminar, and then I show you a little bit the exercises for as homework. Every good lecturer has a homework. If you go out now and say, okay, there was this guy who lived in a village who had more cows than people. That was my opening today. Then you remember me. If you come with RunEU from your partner to us at FHV and you see me somewhere, and then someone saying, yeah, that's Marcus, then you will keep me in mind, because you will say, okay, that's this guy, and I just go over there and talk to him. So that was my opening, my strong opening. Why I did this opening like I did it today? It was also a strategic opening, because obviously you cannot give a storytelling seminar without telling a story at the beginning. And end strong. If you have in mind at the end that you have a whole chessboard with hundreds of opportunities, more than a chess player has, and you can take the risk to do something totally different with your paper, to stand out, to get the money for the proposal, to get the paper published. And if you know this, so the cows and the chessboard, then I was successful for today. Because all the other things you would have learned in Schimmel as well. You could have just downloaded his book, read everything, and I just explained it a little bit from my experience, etc. But these two things, please keep in mind. Get a strong opening and end strong with a sentence where everyone thinks yes, and a paragraph. This is something some paper I cite the next time, or this is definitely a proposal that has to get the money, that this issue is solved in the future for our community. Good. That was it from my side. And now I'm doing what I exactly said. Don't do it. I show you the further work. I have some slides now with some exercises. You can do it at home. They are quite clear. Take the last issue of your favorite journal and have a look on the first 3 articles in the journal. Read the title, the first sentence of the abstract, etc., and then write a short paragraph about the content of the paper. So if you do this and you're able to write a short paragraph of 100 words on the paper with just the 4 sentences you have read, then it was a good paper. Because then you can use get the paper, do 5 minutes of the whole paper and see if it really worked. Did you get the core message of the paper? And if this is possible, it is a good paper. And now do the same with your own papers. Give it to a colleague, give him just 4 sentences. The title, the first sentence of the abstract, the first sentence of the introduction, and the first sentence of the conclusion. And give it to someone who does not know what you're doing in research. So a colleague outside of your department. And tell the person, can you have a look on these 4 sentences and then tell me in 100 words what I'm doing? And if you're then satisfied with the answer, you have written a good paper. And like this, it's basically the whole exercises here. I think it's for opening, it's 3 exercises. For the funnel, how many citations I've given, which share of the citation I used to show what have been done, how many citations I used to point the literature. If you analyze papers like this, Then you see which papers are good, which papers are not good, how your community works and how not. And this is something you can do basically all the time now. If you have next year, 20th of February, if you have half a day without an appointment and you think, oh, I can do this exercise, get out the slide, take a paper, have a look and see what's working and what's not working. Don't do it before Christmas because we're all busy. The same for the exercise in action. Think about your last papers. Is it results and discussion and stuff like this? And the same for resolution. And here I always recommend take the paper you in your community you liked most or you cited the most or who is cited the most. So if there is this one paper, you always say, I have to cite this. Get out this paper because it means actually that it's a really good paper. At least we think so. Then read the conclusion and the resolution and think if you can rewrite it in an even better way. And I'm 100% sure you're able to do this. Because the papers are published, they are good, but they are never perfect. And that's always helped me from a psychological point of view to see